Hello, everybody. This is Keith from CryptoCoinMindSet. I hope that I catch you at a good time and everybody is doing great today. I'd like to thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. Make sure that you check in the live chat. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're from. And at the end, I'm going to be looking to answer whatever questions you have, assuming we have enough time. There's actually a lot I want to cover today. And today, the live stream, I'm basing it off of a video that was done by Tom Bilyeu. And I'm a big fan of Tom Bilyeu and his impact theory. And I'm hoping you are too. If you are, let us know in the live stream. I'd appreciate it. And he covers all kinds of topics, and it's been recently that he's kind of gotten into the NFT cryptocurrency space, and he's done it with a vengeance. I mean, the guy has brought himself like up to speed with what's going on in this industry, like just crazy fast. So props to him. And there's links in the description below for his channel and this particular video that we're going to be kind of dissecting a little bit today and commenting on, and giving you my 2 cents basically as to where I think it's going and what video hey, live stream, and what options we have, the retail person, me and you, the average person, with regard to what's coming with the pending economic collapse, and honestly, with what we can do with gold and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and that kind of thing. So I apologize for running a little bit behind today, but we're going to jump right into it. And I've got several different sections of the video I want to bring out. I've got the time stamps here, so we're gonna try and move it along as much and as quickly as possible. So first thing I got to do is get ready to actually share my screen with you. And all right, there we go. Let's share this screen. Outstanding. There we go. And this is the video. Again, the name of the video, link in the description below, is Emergency Episode: Why This Financial Crisis is Worse Than 2008. And he has a guest on, Balaji, and I don't want to mess his last name up, so I apologize. But there's links to his Twitter channel and his website in the description below. He has a lot of stuff, a lot of insight, and a lot of stuff to say, a lot of insight on financial matters, not just locally but globally. And yeah, I think that it's worth a listen. So again, I've broken down certain sections of the video. Some of them, I think the longest one is about 3 minutes long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that up full screen for you, play it, and then I'll pause it, come back, and we're going to chat about it. Okay. So let's see if I can't get this going here.
This goes to an idea of there are second, third, fourth, fifth order consequences to things. And when you have a lot of things happening at once, especially on a geopolitical stage, this all plays into why in this unique moment we are standing so close to the precipice, and why people aren't hearing you that we're standing this close. So I want to re-anchor everybody around this. Interview is born out of you spent $1 million to get people to understand why we're printing so much money. That's so crazy. Like, there's no way that people understand that. You're the only person I can conceive of that would ever do this. I mean, it struck me as so bizarre when you first brought everybody's attention to this, that you were going to pay the $1 million to get attention. I'm obsessed with getting people to say like what their thing is in a single sentence.
Here's in a single sentence.
Yeah.
If in 2008 it was a banking crisis, in a mortgage crisis, in 2023 it's a central banking crisis and a currency crisis.
Now,
okay, sorry, still trying to learn these controls a little bit here, but here's the thing: central banking crisis and a currency crisis. Again, we've printed money, or the US has printed money ad infinitum now, when it started back 2014, 2013 with quantitative easing, which some have argued isn't printing money, but of course it is. That's exactly what you're doing. And we're now here, somewhat a decade later, reaping the results of that. And those results are not good. They are not good. And it's eroding away, obviously, the dollar's reserve currency status in the world. I mean, you can see that just in, I mean, you don't, first off, mainstream media isn't reporting on this, but if you have any kind of other means of getting your news, you know that this is happening. There are countries all around the world that are in the process of de-dollarizing. Okay, so they're no longer transacting within the SWIFT system, which is the system set up that makes the dollar basically the world reserve currency. And why is that? I mean, we've talked about it, or I've talked about it on many of my videos, and now actually I think a couple of the live streams, that we've weaponized the US dollar. I mean, again, the most recent example of that is the US putting sanctions on Russia. I mean, basically confiscating all their wealth via the SWIFT system. And then other countries obviously coming to the realization of, if they can do that to them, why can't they do that to us? And the end of the day, the answer is the US can, because they control the system. And that is part of, and if you ask me, a large part of the fact that these countries across the world are busy de-dollarizing, getting off the US dollar as the standard means of currency. All right. I don't want to make this, because if I keep jabbering too much, this video and this live stream is going to be super long. So I want to try and get to the next section that I would like to highlight for you. Hang on one second while I try and cue that up. All right, we're close. So I'm gonna let this rock, and then we'll go from there. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's get back to this.
They start hiking interest rates very rapidly, and everybody who
was
bought
that
bonds,
deceit?
I think it was deceit. I've got actually an article on this called "Too Fake to Tell." Okay, which basically makes the case that Powell was aware, at least at one point, that so let me give an analogy here, because it's a very technical sounding space, and when you explain all of this, you know that meme where the guy's like pointing at the cork board, and like
there's all the lines connected to everything else, and you look like the crazy guy.
Yeah, exactly. See, the thing is, the financial system is set up to be intentionally opaque.
If you are the Fed and you're saying, hey guys, buy long duration bonds, which will lock you into an interest rate, rates are going to be low forever, so just take what you can get now, take it out 10 years, whatever, all's going to be well. We don't have any intention of raising the interest rates, but you actually do plan to raise interest rates. So then the problem is people put all their money into an asset that you are about to tank by raising the interest rates. So they effectively get you to buy. Now, I don't know. I don't understand this well enough to say whether they did it on purpose or if this is just one of those things that's too hard to predict. I don't know. But that was the effect. Hey guys, buy these bonds, buy them long, not going to increase the interest rates anytime soon. And then people go buy them, billions of dollars worth of them, and then they raise the interest rates. And so now the value of those bonds tank. Now your money is locked, because when you bought them, just so people understand how this works, when they bought the bonds, they thought they'd be able to sell them. So they didn't think, oh, I'm going to be stuck with this for 10 years. That's the time to maturity, but they thought that they would be able to sell them, that the market would still be good because interest rates were going to stay low. So it all hinges on this question. Did he know Did the Fed know they were going to raise rates? Because if they knew they were going to raise rates and they got the banks to buy in, now you've got a problem. And I've heard you say the phrase, the Fed lied and banks died. Now, that's sinister. If they knew they were going to raise the rates, that's really gnarly.
Can you see the screen there? On page 193 of these minutes, okay, the Federal Reserve minutes here. Second, I think we're at a point of encouraging risk-taking. Meanwhile, we look like we are blowing a fixed income duration bubble right across the credit spectrum that will result in big losses when rates come up down the road. You can almost say that is our strategy, okay? So
Woof.
At least 10 years ago, he was aware that, how could you not be aware in his position, but that if you sold a ton of bonds and then hiked rates very, very, very rapidly, that you would devalue everything you just sold. Like the bond market is complicated. So I came up with an analogy to kind of explain this, right? Imagine Apple told Best Buy and Target and Walmart that it was only going to be selling iPhone 10s for the foreseeable future, okay? And so it sold them billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of iPhone 10s. And, it said, we're not going to be selling better iPhones for a long time. Buy them in bulk, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then after Apple sells all those billions of dollars in inventory, suddenly it turns around and launches the iPhone 11, a better phone, and thereby devalues everything it just sold by at least 10 or 20%. And even though it's maybe a small depreciation, it's across such a huge amount of inventory that Best Buy, Target, Walmart take massive losses. And some of these are low margin businesses. So it's like a huge, huge hit to them. And the thing is that, whether Apple knew that it was going to launch the iPhone 11, which it probably did, or even if it didn't know, either way, at the time it sold those old iPhones, it was telling the buyers it's not going to launch a better model for a long time. Make sense? Right? So had Apple done that, had it committed to not launching a new phone and dumped a bunch of older phone inventory on buyers, and then suddenly devalued all of that, the buyers would have a case. They'd call that fraud, right? Apple would have sold those assets on false representations, regardless of whether they knew at the time that they were going to launch the iPhone 11. And frankly, how could they have not? Okay, but if they just changed their minds, the commitment they gave to the guys who bought it at the time that they were selling it was, we're not going to launch a new phone for a long time, so feel free to buy tons of these. They're our best model. Okay, does that make sense? And that's something that people can get their heads around. Okay, as a bond buyer, you have the same thing. You think, okay, do I want to buy at today's interest rate, or do I want to wait and maybe the interest rate will be higher and I buy tomorrow? Especially because if I buy a bond today, it gets depreciated if the interest rate is hiked tomorrow. The Treasury and the Fed are different.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. Okay, so a couple of things to consider in what was just said. You see, I still have on the screen, the Fed lied, banks died. At the end of the day, and I think in a couple of the clips that I'm going to be putting forward here, Tom is very forgiving when it comes to saying that, is it just they're trying to do good and they made a mistake, or are they just incompetent, or are they actually evil in what they're doing? And as much as I like to think always the best in people, let's be honest. Sometimes people just have their own agenda, and part of that agenda is not necessarily doing good for other people, but just doing good for themselves. So back to the beginning of that clip where Balaji talks about and shows you the quote that, we're kind of giving them the shot across the bow, and we know what we're doing. It's basically going to burst the bubble, and I guess you can say that's what we're doing. Well, oh my God, man. That was 10 years ago. He quoted that. And here we are 10 years later, after all the quantitative easing and now the quantitative tightening, you've got the Fed devaluing the very bonds that they're telling retail banks to go ahead, and central banks for that matter, to go ahead and invest in. Because, we recently had some of the biggest bank collapses in history in the last few months. And those collapses, in again, my opinion, and in the opinion of many different prominent people in the financial space, is that the banks really didn't do anything wrong. They invested the way that they were told that was the safe way to invest. So, buy these bonds, buy them at this interest rate, which was very low or non-existent at that point, and, buy them for the long term because, we're not going to be raising rates anytime within the foreseeable future. So they put that out there, and then here we go. Like, no sooner Powell gets reelected as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, bam, they're raising rates like it's going out of style. We've come up 5.5% interest in interest payments and interest rates in the last several months, year. That's crazy. How are banks supposed to be able to then have the liquidity they need and the reserves they need in these bonds that they've purchased at next to no interest rate? And now they are basically devalued. Thank you to the Fed for raising those rates. Like they point out in this clip we just watched, that if Apple did that, launching an iPhone, here, buy all these iPhone 10s because we're not going to put out a new iPhone anytime soon. And then, after all those purchases were made, rolled out an iPhone 11, guess what? Retailers and customers would be furious and be taking them to court left and right. Well, that's no different than what the Fed just did. And frankly, continues to do. Yes, I realize before there's comments in the live chat or in the comments once this gets posted online, that yes, I realize they paused the interest rate hikes in this last session from the Fed. Honestly, I think that's just the point of tipping the scale, and where now we're going to come down the hill on this economic collapse. My opinion, again, this isn't financial advice. I'm no financial advisor. I'm just some old guy on the internet who happens to pay attention to things and remembers how things used to run, and how, this country used to be great. But again, not trying to get down that rabbit hole right now. I want to queue up what is the next one. And it's kind of funny. He posts a chart, and I'll try and put it up a little larger on the screen when the time comes, about central banks in this next section, and the amount of gold that they're purchasing, just within the last year. And you can see it's on a steady incline, just to how much they're trying to maintain their liquidity through gold reserves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later and how that can possibly help you. But let me see if I can't cue this up close to where it needs to be, and then we'll go from there. Oh, look at that. That's pretty close. All right. Let's get to this here.
Is going on. And that's what we're really dancing with here, is the complexity of this problem. But there are so many signals that something's going on from all the things we listed. And I just want to recap some of the things we listed in the beginning here. So you've got debt ceiling is way up. Markets estimating a record high probability of U.S. sovereign default. Most U.S. banks are near insolvency or already technically insolvent. 3 of the 4 largest bank failures in U.S. history have happened in the last 2 months. $2.2 trillion in losses at banks have yet to be reconciled. Morgan Stanley believes that the commercial real estate sector is poised to be a worse disaster than the 2008 financial crisis. 2022 was the worst year for bonds in a long time. De-dollarization, which you went through in detail, is happening. Sovereign defaults are at an all-time high. We had 14 in the last 3 years versus 19 in the previous 20 years. That's 4.7 per year now versus less than 1 per year previously. That's an increase of almost 5x. We have millionaire migration to the US has dropped by 86% in the last 3 years. And central banks are buying a ton of gold. The chart is ridiculous, presumably because they see that something is coming. So it's like, okay, you are the
You actually missed a few. You got a lot. You missed a few.
I cut out like 10.
Yeah, so there's an insurance crisis. There's the fiscal crisis. Blue states are bankrupt, like California, Illinois, places like that. They're losing a lot of it. There's the auto loans. There's the student loans. There's credit cards. Each of these are like trillion-dollar problems that could crash the economy. And they're all happening essentially at the same time.
It is insane. So I feel like we're standing on this really rickety thing. You said that the economy is beginning to creak. But I've heard you use an example before that I worry is more accurate. Now, remember, all I care about, I want people to look at this. Neither of us have a crystal ball. The one thing we are guaranteed to get wrong is timing. I just want everyone to be very clear. Now, the wins and losses all come around timing. So, of course, like if I had a crystal ball, I'd just shut the show down and just go make a lot of money. So I have no idea when this is going to happen. So to be very clear, but you've used an example before that I think is absolutely brilliant. And that is, this is a Wile E. Coyote moment.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
So, Wile E. Coyote, if people haven't seen it, you can probably put up an image of it. This character from Looney Tunes, and they walk off a cliff and they're just, merrily going in midair. Then one day they look down, they're like, oh my goodness. And the markdown is digital in a sense, right? They just fall all the way straight down, right? And if you look at the graphs of some of these bank stocks, they're kind of like that, where they're analog, and they're just kind of floating through the air. And then suddenly somebody actually looks at the financials, they look down, and they're just digital, they die overnight.
That analogy is so apt because...
Okay. I sorry, tried to get back over here as quick as I could. It plays completely to what I was just talking about with regard to the recent collapses that we've had of the banking institutions. Again, the feds have basically set up the cliff for the banks to walk on. And then what happens? They're just walking along thinking they're doing the right thing, buying these bonds, and they're buying them for the long term so they can maintain their liquidity, etc. And bing, the Fed basically pulls the cliff out as they're walking off, hanging on, thinking, hey, everything's great. And then they look down and all of a sudden the Fed's raised interest rates 5.5%. And now they got to sell these bonds at a loss when they got to create any liquidity of any substance for their bank. It should be completely illegal. I don't care, government or not, for the Fed or any other government agency, for that matter, to be able to do that with regard to basically defrauding banks. I'm no fan of banks, but defrauding banks or me and you. Because at the end of the day, who's going to end up footing this bill? It isn't going to be the banks. It isn't going to be the government. And if it is the government, it's going to be the government with our money. They're careful in this last set of banking failures to not use the word bailout like they did in 2008 with banks being too big to fail. Well, all they did was a bail-in using FDIC insurance. It's the same thing. Where do you think that money comes from? But it's about optics. It's about keeping us complacent and just involved in our lives enough to not be worrying about what's going on with the Fed and the banks and so on. Oh, that's bad, but I don't have money in that bank, so we're okay. The problem is, and I encourage you, again, this video that we're kind of breaking up into sections here from Tom Bilyeu, again, link to his channel in the description below, link to this video in the description below, and that he's talking about with Balaji, again, link to his information in the description below. I encourage you to watch the whole thing, because you'll hear they talk about the fact that, you know, this is almost like a repeating cycle. They tell you that, you know, or my interpretation of what they're telling you is that, you know, you are, well, okay. Before I even go down that road, watch the whole thing yourself. My opinion is that the government, the Fed, are doing this on purpose, you know, and even potentially the other global leaders, non-elected global leaders, that are trying to pull everything together again in this IMF moment of, by 2030 you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, they need to create the crisis in order to then save you from the crisis, kind of like COVID. Again, if for whatever reason, because I'm mentioning that, the live stream gets struck or whatever because of violating guidelines, everything is backed up on Odyssey. There'll be links to Library and Odyssey in the description below. Head on over there always and follow us. You'll find that many of the other major YouTube creators in this space are already on Odyssey. It's basically a blockchain-based, decentralized, censorship-resistant video platform like YouTube. So if for whatever reason any of this information comes off YouTube, you'll find it over there on Odyssey. And so please go ahead and follow us there. And we'll talk about it in the end of this video. In the end of this live stream, you can find all of the official social media channels for CryptoCoinMindSet on CoinTree. So again, watch to the end and you'll get all that information, and there'll be links to that in the description below as well. Okay, so I actually like the analogy of the Wile E. Coyote moment. You know, I can remember being a kid and watching the cartoon as he's just like, you know, do off the cliff, and then all of a sudden he looks down and it's like, uh-oh, and he's gone. So I love it. All right. Again, I don't want to make this video too long. We're already at like 27 minutes, and I'm I'm like 3 sections in here or something. So let's see if I can't queue up the next one, and we'll get you on to the next frame of thought that I'd like to expound upon with these guys. Right about this is as close as I can get. So here we go.
Billions of dollars, trillions of dollars. Where did all that go? I mean, how many articles have you seen? Is it a daily thing on that, a breakdown of where the printed money went? If you know that inflation is taxation, then you know, one option is you can just stay in the system, like those Republicans, like those people in the Middle East, and those folks who are near the money spigot, who can benefit from the Cantillon effect, do another print, and they benefit again first, right? But if you see it coming and you get out first, now you're not part of the base that is diluted. If you get out to outside money, you get out to gold, you get out to Bitcoin, you get out to maybe a foreign fiat, now you have an asset where, to go back to that example, let's say there's $100 billion and the US government prints another 100 billion. It seized 50% of dollars, essentially, right? But if there's 21 million Bitcoin, the US government cannot print even 1 Bitcoin. So it can't seize the Bitcoin. Does that make sense? Right?
By stealth means, yeah. I'm not in the camp that Bitcoin is unseizable. I think
that's true.
You lock somebody up, they're gonna real quick be like, all right, here it is.
Yes, but basically it's not easily centrally seizable. You have to go back to communism. And this is actually very important. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies more generally increase the cost of seizure. Okay, because like a SWAT team costs money. You know, it's like what, $40,000, $50,000 or whatever, right? So now you have to actually look at the P&L of going and kicking in somebody's door and beating them up and taking their private keys, right? And you have to have, you have to find them. You have to find, you have to have, you know, like some legal authority to go in and beat them up, take and then you have to replicate that. And that'll arouse resistance, because now it's no longer the camouflage predator, it's the lion, right? It's something that you can actually see. And
Okay. A little bit to unpack in there. As I put on the screen here, I think the main key to that is inflation is taxation. I know some people will debate that, and depending on what political camp you're in, but at the end of the day, if you're paying more for goods and services, and even if there is more money in circulation, you're not any richer. If anything, you're poorer by design because of this inflation of the goods and services. Again, inflation isn't, it's seen as a rise in prices, but at the end of the day, it's a devaluation of the dollar or whatever currency it is that you're using to make the purchases. Not to get too far down that road, another point I want to kind of hit on, and we're going to touch base back on it a little bit further because they get back into it again a little bit further in the video, about the potential to seize Bitcoin. Now, Balaji's correct in the fact that, okay, Bitcoin can't be inflated away because the government can't print any new Bitcoin. 21 million, there it is. So, yes, he is correct. And as far as like overtly seizing the Bitcoin, he's correct, because they can't inflate it away. They have no control over that. Tom is also correct, and in a video that'll be dropping on my channel probably next week, I talk a little bit about security with regard to cryptocurrency, and one of the things I talk about is physical security, your physical security with regard to cryptocurrency, and the things you should be taking into account when it comes to your own physical security, how you secure your devices, et cetera, and things you again, what you choose to do with regard to that security is ultimately up to you. However, it's something you need to consider. And as Tom points out, it's often referred to in this in the cryptocurrency space as a wrench attack, where somebody comes up, threatens you with a wrench, and you're just going to give them your device, your private keys, et cetera, and I don't know. I'm not saying that can't happen. All I'm saying is, depending on the person, the degree to which that can happen differs. Because at the end of the day, not your keys, not your coins. So if you maintain control of your private keys despite the physical intimidation, then your keys, your coins, government can't take them. I mean, there have been, I think, again, if you've been around the space any length of time, there were always reports, well, the government seized cryptocurrency, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, they got a physical hardware device that they've now have possession of. But at the end of the day, unless you can access that hardware device, guess what? You got nothing. You got a piece of hardware that can literally be set up on another device, and that money will be gone. But anyway, not looking to get down that road. But again, points to consider as we talk about cryptocurrency potentially being one of the means by which we can exit the system. And matter of fact, the next section I'm going to queue up on this video, they talk about de-dollarization, kind of like I mentioned earlier in this live stream, but they're gonna get into a little bit more detail and some of the effects of inflation and how to opt out. And obviously, Bitcoin cryptocurrency is one of the means, and they talk about gold, etc. So let's cue that up and see if we can't get that going for you right now. Let's see. I gotta find it. Sorry. All right. All right. They're a little into it at this point, but we'll let it go.
Cause way more inflation. And then you have something, and you have options also, right? You have exits, you have alternatives, you have cryptocurrency, and you have foreign currencies, and you have other countries that are opting out and getting into gold or trading with China. The thing is that
do you think that helps or hurts the pull apart?
Well, that's it. I mean, helps. It accelerates in a sense, right? Because a person can pass away without any successor, but for a system to die, it needs a successor or multiple successors. Like, let's say for the Soviet Union to collapse, people had to have an alternative system they could look towards, that they would copy. And so people copied the US system, right? So when the Soviet Union went down, India moved towards capitalism and so on. China's the only one that didn't, right? It kind of kept its own system at the time. Not the only one. There are 5 communist countries that stayed communist, but China was a big one that did. Almost everybody else went into the kind of capitalist liberal democracy camp. So right now, what happened in March is really epochal, because you had AI going vertical, and that's a whole other massive storyline that's like an entire multiple podcast, whatever. You had AI going vertical. You had the banking crisis getting underway, showing how important this devaluation of bonds was. And you actually also had China going vertical, which is much more important than people realize. Do you know what I mean by that? China going vertical in March?
No, I was going to ask you.
This was just not covered in the Western press. It should have been blaring front page headlines and total focus on it. China developed a new muscle that I had not seen them flex. They had been kind of yelling and so on for the past few years. They developed the muscle of diplomacy, and they figured out how to get a peace treaty between Saudi and Iran, which is a huge deal, to get Saudi-Yemen war to stop, to essentially unify the Middle Eastern countries around Chinese, like China being the hegemon coming in. Like for example, they're forming like a unified navy in the region with Chinese input as a counterweight to the U.S. Navy. Okay, that's insane, like totally different than what you think of as Middle East, where everybody's warring. They're like all unified with each other, Saudi and Iran and China against the U.S. The U.S. has unified its enemies.
Right there, he just hit the nail on the head. The U.S. has unified its enemies. And the result of that is the de-dollarization of the globe and the weakening of the US dollar as the world reserve currency. Remember, I mentioned earlier in this live stream, the US, I don't know, last 30, 40 years at least, has utilized their reserve currency status to weaponize the US dollar against countries that don't do basically what the US wants, or has ideologies that the US doesn't agree with, or at least whatever administration is in power at the time doesn't agree with. And the more that the US uses this weapon that's called the US dollar, the more that governments around the globe have realized, well, again, if it can happen to them, why can't it happen to me or us? And it can, because again, the US is basically the guy with the big stick waving it around, telling you what he's gonna do to you with regard to your monetary ability to conduct business across the globe. So now you have the Chinese stepping in, and you've seen it in recent months. In the last six months or so, you've seen the Chinese government come in with helping out to create peace in the Middle East, and working with Russia to create trade in the digital yuan, and for that matter, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart right now. Having trade with European nations in the yuan. So again, slowly but surely helping the world to pull away from the US dollar, which only weakens the US. Then you got to consider, what's the US response to this? For some reason, the US thinks, or well, I'm going to assume that the U.S. thinks, or at least our officials that are in power think that the U.S. is invincible to things, and they can print money ad infinitum, and there'll be no repercussions of that. Well, of course, there's going to be repercussions of that. And this next section talks about something that's called modern monetary theory, MMT. And MMT basically, in a nutshell, says that just print money. Who cares? We can print as much money as we want without any side effects, or, and boom, we can pay for whatever we need, et cetera, et cetera. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, is the short answer. But at the end of the day, this is what some people in some camps believe, hey, US can do that. And I don't think I have it queued up in this section, but again, watch the whole impact theory video here. And again, link in the description below. And you're going to hear that basically Balaji talks about the fact that, okay, this whole $1 trillion coin thing that came out when the debt ceiling crisis was a news story. Print up a $1 trillion coin, MMT, who cares? Then we don't need to worry about the debt ceiling. You'll just have the money you need. Anyway, but now he also talks a little further on. Again, I'm not sure if it's in this clip we're about to watch, but then he talks about the fact that, okay, well, now they do it more surreptitiously. We'll use premium bonds. And then think about it. The financial system is created to be purposely confusing, purposely, like, they don't want you to understand. Because if we understood everything that revolved around this whole stupid financial system, there would be a revolution around the globe like overnight. Matter of fact, I think that was a quote somewhere by Henry Ford. If people knew what was going on in the banking system, there'd be a revolution overnight. I don't know. I have to look that up later. Anyway, so let me see if I can't get this next section queued up so we can move this thing along. Because again, we're at 40 minutes right now. Hang on. All right, somewhere close to this. Here we go.
The $1 trillion coin might be the least bad option. Why the legal scholar Rowan Gray thinks the U.S. Mint can defuse. And you see the United States of America, $1 trillion. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is, now it wasn't actually pursued. Okay. But the fact that this got closer to being done or discussed. Okay. And it was defended by Krugman, and it was only rejected from a optics / tactical standpoint, because it might have
why $1 trillion coin? What?
Oh, you don't know about? Okay, so basically, because the debt ceiling, evidently this was something that they had a rationale that this would be a workaround, and the Treasury could mint a coin of any denominations. Just like they could just mint a coin and deposit it, and via some magic, the debt ceiling wouldn't be a constraint anymore in government spending.
I'm outright confused by this one. So I see $1 trillion coin. I assume somebody's kidding and they're just talking about hyperinflation, because it does make me immediately think about that.
Oh, you hadn't heard of this? Oh, sorry, I thought you had heard of it.
If this is a meme, like what?
Have you heard of like modern monetary theory?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Basically, it's a group of folks who believe that the only constraint on the U.S. government's ability to print is inflation and taxation. Like, that is to say, they can and should print as much money as they want. It is something which is just a legacy, stupid constraint that we have a debt ceiling or whatever. It's essentially like, though they wouldn't phrase it this way at all, it's digital communism that says, because the government has guns, it can seize as much of your wealth as it needs to by printing money, and it can force you to give it back at gunpoint if you want, so it can redistribute all the wealth and so on and so forth. Okay. So people, which is true that it can digitally do that, and then the question is whether that breaks the illusion and people move to some other currency or whatever, right? At which point you get to difficult situations I'll get to. But this $1 trillion coin thing comes out of that school where they're like, we don't want to negotiate with Republicans over the debt ceiling. Instead, we will use this thing in the legal code to mint $1 trillion coin and deposit it such that we don't have to negotiate with Republicans at all. It's almost like an executive order, right? The point is, though, that this creation of money, they're obsessed with it. Like, a lot of these folks are like, mint the coin, mint the coin. Krugman has talked about it. This guy on Bloomberg, Weisenthal has talked about it. Rowan Gray has talked about it. It's in the Atlantic. It's taken seriously as a policy proposal, and it's gotten closer, since the last debt crisis. Whether it actually happens or not, it's symbolic of. Go ahead.
So the $1 trillion coin would go in somebody's bank account and allow them to
not a humans, but in the government's bank account, and then it wouldn't need to raise the debt ceiling because it now has the money. It wouldn't change anything, is how they say. It wouldn't have any inflationary impact. I think I'm kidding. Just Google $1 trillion coin. See, that's the thing.
Okay,
what's good is the expression on your face. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make fun of them, but I want to pause before I do. That I'm going to assume that they're smart, well-meaning, well-intentioned people, but they really believe this is going to work. And so one of us has the wrong base assumption. So here is a law that I live by, and I really believe this is true. When two smart, well-intentioned people think the other is stupid, they have different base assumptions. Now, a base assumption is your belief about how you are and how the world is. And now, when you have a collision of values, it's a totally separate thing. And that's it's what you believe the world ought to be like versus how it actually is. So I believe, maybe erroneously, but when I hear $1 trillion coin, I have a base assumption that says, if you print money, you have what you're calling tax. You have robbed people of the buying power because of something mechanistic, not something philosophical, something mechanistic, that there is now more money, but no additional goods. And so the cost of the goods goes up because everybody's like so flush with cash that they will pay more for a finite pool of items. And so the cost of those items necessarily goes up to match the number of people just like throwing money at them. And so you think like, oh my God, I just got $1 trillion. But now your loaf of bread costs $1 trillion. And so yes, you have $1 trillion, but everything just costs more in proportion. And so you haven't gotten rich. Like, I will just tell you, as somebody who went from normal money to rich in the refresh of a banking app because I sold a piece of my company, like that moment where you outstrip inflation, your life changes. Everything's different. You can afford different everything. It's just like, it's a really fascinating moment. But if my rent, like if somebody gives me $100 million, but my rent moves up in proportion, I may have $100 million, but I still have to live in the same apartment. I still have to have the same car. My gas proportionally has gone up. Food's proportionally gone up. So it literally doesn't matter. So,
and he sums that up right well in the very end there. It literally doesn't matter because just because you can print the money doesn't mean that you've created new wealth. All you've done is diluted the money supply that's already existing, and done what? You've literally robbed people of their money. You've robbed them of their money. This is wow, I can't say that for some reason today. Modern monetary theory, MMT. In a nutshell. And why is that? Because at the end of the day, inflation is taxation. And again, it isn't necessarily that the price of the goods and services are going up because all of a sudden, whatever. It's because you've devalued the currency that you're using to purchase those goods and services. Hence the reason, Bitcoin being a fixed supply will make Bitcoin, and you can see that already. The price of Bitcoin, or the value of Bitcoin, started down here and now it's just slowly going up. And why is that? It is because, guess what? they can't print anymore. And we're at the point where, honestly, it's like over 19 million of the only going to be 21 million are already printed, minted, and out there. And of those, let's consider the fact that about 4 million-ish are lost forever between devices that were lost, keys that were lost, etc. Why it's so very important to make sure you get your private keys, put them in a safe place, several safe places. I've got a lot of articles on my website that'll help you to decide what wallet is right for you, how to have some security when you're functioning with that wallet. I mean, base level stuff, you got to do what is right for you. But I mean, I give you the base premises of, stuff like VPNs, encrypted emails, virus protection, firewalls, and so on and so forth, two-factor authentication, etc. So all that kind of stuff is there on my website, CryptoCoinMindset.com. Links to all of that will be in the description below once this live stream is over. So head over there, check it out. All that information is on the blog. Make it your starting point for getting moving, to be prepared to be outside of this system. Now, the next thing that they talk about is the potential for seizure of these assets, because I know I cut out a couple of the things about gold. We are going to, there is one section I want to put in about gold confiscation, because I mean, that's already happened in US history. So anyway, but right now, let me cue up the next thing where they talk about the future, potential asset forfeiture and confiscation, not only again of gold, but of Bitcoin potentially. And then we'll come and talk about that a little bit further once you listen to what they have to say. Hang on one second. All right, that's close. Let's get that going.
Preview of what we're going to see in terms of just like 2008, it's like a preview of what we're going to see. It's like an appetizer for a main course of a lot of change happening at once.
All right, you have a very clear thesis on this. What is the change? What does the future look like?
What does the future look like? So, I mean, I have a thesis, and of course, look, I could be wrong and so on, but and let me also give some optimism or whatever here. So let me see if I can say it in a few sentences.
Optimism, okay, or whatever.
Let's hear it. All right. So the few sentence thesis is G7 countries are actually running out of money, and will attempt asset seizure in the future, whether through inflation or actual seizure.
That is so dark. Where's my optimism?
Okay, I'm getting to optimism.
That's terrifying. I don't know that people understand like how gnarly seizure is. So first of all, I have family in Cyprus, and so watching this happen, where the bank's just like, we're taking your money now.
Right.
Crazy. Anyway, keep going. So there's going to be some kind of seizure. Agreed. Terrified, but agreed.
So the reason, whether it's via inflation or actually seizure, I mean, the reason is like, people didn't expect Dalio's Principles of the Changing World Order. It came out, I think, right before Ukraine and the rate hikes, and it seemed obvious that the path they were going to take was just going to be printing a ton of money. But sometimes the path they take is a non-obvious one, and it may just be hiking rates to the moon and just watching the system collapse and doing selective bail. We don't know exactly how the thing will unwind. Sometimes things surprise you, right? It's probably likely it's going to be printed. Point is, though, G7 countries are going to have a real problem, and they're going to be hard up for money. And then a lot of the world hinges on whether or not the G7 countries and China can seize digital assets. If they can, that's like one branch point in history. It means that you have like total states in the CBDC and so on and so forth. If they cannot, then you have a different branch point in history where it means that communities can now basically have digital gold or cryptocurrency and crowdfund bits of territory where they can have their own startup societies and eventually what I call network states. Okay. And then you'd go back to the future of something more like the 1800s, where you could get a plot of land and you could build a town or something like that. Or even, you know, the Alaska Purchase, Louisiana Purchase, things of that nature, where their sovereigns would sell land. The branch point is fundamentally, will asset seizure be possible in the digital world? And the biggest risk factor for that is actually Apple, Google, and Microsoft, because they have operating system access. And that's actually, if I think about what I'm most concerned about, it is the fact that Apple has software update and Google can, you know, get into your Google Drive, and Microsoft, you know, has Windows. And if ordered by the state, in theory, they could scan your hard drive for private keys and then pull your digital assets. That is, to me, one of the most important problems that's coming up in the next X number of years.
And he isn't wrong. That is a problem that's going to be coming up. I mean, we've kind of had a taste of that. You know, I'm a proponent of hardware wallets with regard to long-term hodling of your cryptocurrency assets. And I prefer the Ledger Nano. And we had some, we got to see a little bit of that potentiality with regard to that when Ledger rolled out their Recover service. And it became, I mean, I guess it should have always been in the back of our heads that, you know, there could be a firmware update that would allow for private keys to be exfiltrated from a hardware device. But it kind of really wasn't there, you know. It wasn't something that was, you know, right there in your face, you know. And then, you know, the people who prefer Trezor, which is also the second hardware wallet that I suggest here on CryptoCoinMindSet, because it's open source, figures that can't happen. Well, just because it's open source doesn't stop it from happening. All it does is allow people to see that it has happened. So hopefully you can make moves before they actually exfiltrate your private keys. So the point being, as he mentions here, cryptocurrency is run with, you know, technological devices, electronic devices. Those devices as a whole require some kind of operating system. And because of that, there's that potentiality that, you know, government mandates to these big tech companies that, hey, find that stuff and confiscate it. I want those private keys. Now, will the government do that? I don't know. But if, you know, what's going on in the current state of affairs, as far as the government is concerned, is any indication, yeah, they're going to try. I mean, look at it this way. Look what's going on right now with the SEC attacking cryptocurrency, trying to potentially freeze Binance US assets for what ultimately was no reason. When the judge heard the case, and I talked about this in a previous video. So matter of fact, make sure, if you're new here, I'll take the minute to say it now. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tick that bell icon, and click the all. And I'd appreciate it if you blow up that like button right now on this live stream to get it pushed out to more people. So thank you for that. And anyway, you got to believe that the government is going to try and really make asset forfeiture happen. And part of that is to transition over to CBDC, because they program and can control the CBDCs. Again, I keep saying it, and again, people tell me I'm wrong, and super duper, that's your opinion. But FedNow starts next month. And I see FedNow as the precursor to CBDCs here in the United States. And anyway, I think you might understand that a little bit better in this next section, because in the next section of these videos that I'm queuing up right now, They talk a little bit about the future asset, the crypto's current status, that kind of thing, and the potential for CBDCs to be the government's answer to all that. All right, this is close here, so we're going to kick it off here and let them talk.
In the 2020s, all politics becomes crypto tribalism. Why? Because again, taking that Twitter analogy, just like you went from Twitter being acknowledged to have political importance to being the main event of all politics, and every politician is on Twitter first, and they think about Twitter first often as when they do something. They do a bill and they're thinking about it for Twitter, right? I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that. I mean, Twitter didn't just the 2016 election also really wasn't about Trump. It was about Twitter. Twitter was upstream. It elected Trump. It elected Bolsonaro. It got Brexit through. It was essentially a parallel media channel, and that's why those elections flipped. That's also why there was a counterattack on Twitter from 2016 to 2022, and it looked like the genie had been partially pushed back in the bottle, but now Elon then freed Twitter again, and we have digital glasnost. Okay, so with that whole story, where even as big as social media had gotten to hundreds of millions of users, billions of dollars, public companies, overthrowing governments in 2010, people still didn't think it was going to be the main thing for the president of the United States of America. With me so far?
Yep.
Okay. So in the same way, in 2023, where cryptocurrency is it's $1 trillion. It's hundreds of millions of users globally. It's quite a few billionaires, publicly traded companies, and even perhaps more importantly, every single bank, financier, government in the world has heard of Bitcoin, and many of them have launched CBDC programs in part or in whole motivated by the competitive threat of cryptocurrency, okay? And El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as a national currency, and Panama and I think Central African Republic are considering it. And so it's kind of like the Arab Spring in the sense of there's already a political proof point of cryptocurrency's importance. You know, there's the Wyoming DAO law, there's the Tennessee DAO law, there's Texas saying Bitcoin shall not be infringed, there's all, you know, Colorado accepts crypto for taxes, blah, 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 blah. There's all of this stuff that's happened. And yet still, if I said that in a few years, one of the most important questions in the world will be, does government have enough cryptocurrency to finance its operations? That still seems unrealistic. Okay. That's still something which seems distant. Oh, the US government is going to count how much Bitcoin it has, right?
That sounds unrealistic, but is it really? They're going to create a CBDC. They're going to try and force its use on us. And they're going to do it just like Tom mentioned earlier. You know, people in Cyprus, what did they do? They closed the banks, took half of their money, and reopened the bank, said, here, you can have what's left. Or in India, where they just said, yep, this particular type of fiat paper, fiat money is no longer acceptable. Turn it in, get a credit for it in your account, or see you later. It's not like they haven't done it before. It's not like they can't do it with this banking system. They control the entire thing. So the government basically imposing its will like this and trying to, with what he was talking about with regard to Twitter, stifle us basically from coordinating an effort against them around the world. Because prior to the whole COVID thing, there were protests going on everywhere. You heard about it in mainstream media all over the place. There was all kinds of France and England, and they were everywhere. They were happening around the world, Australia. And then COVID happened. Well, that was the way to kind of put the stranglehold on it and you know, stop all that. And then making social media platforms basically censor all this information. We know what happened. Once Elon bought Twitter, he released the documents proving that the government was able to do it. And when I say the government, I'm both sides of the government, but at least from a U.S. perspective. You know, both sides of the aisle. It is not. We hear very often that the Democrat Party and the Republican Party are basically two wings of the same bird, and that's. The more I hear it and the more I see what's going on lately, the more I believe that. I didn't believe that, I'm not going to lie, you know, even a few years ago. I really didn't. But the more I see, the more I think through why are they doing what they're doing, questioning every move, every bill, everything that these legislators, our elected officials, are doing. I see it's a collaborative effort. It's a collaborative effort. And the culmination of that collaborative effort is going to be a CBDC, retail CBDC, that they are going to push on to you and I, and ultimately, you know, everyone around the world, or at least that's going to be the attempt. And they'll regulate it, they'll control it, they'll stop you from buying things, only allow you to buy from certain places, et cetera, et cetera. They will pick the winners and the losers, not only businesses, but you and I. So you say something like this video would, yeah, I'd be on a list, and yeah, my CBDCs, you can't buy anything. If I even got the CBDC for that matter, I could get penalized. But the point is, you need to be in a position to be outside of that system. And the only way to be outside of that system is to start making moves to be outside of that system. And gold, definitely a way to be outside of that system. I mean, go listen to Robert Kiyosaki. He considers himself a gold bug. And he talks about buying gold back in the 70s. And you know, he still has all that, and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying gold is bad. I buy gold. Matter of fact, link in the description below at the end of this video for Acre Gold. For approximately $50 a month, you can slowly dollar cost average into gold and have it shipped straight to your door. It's an affiliate link. I appreciate you using it. It costs you nothing to use it. But if you're looking for a way to have at least some means outside of the current financial system, this will give you that option. And watch for a future video with regard to that. Right now, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole. The other means is obviously cryptocurrency. It makes sense to have Bitcoin and other crypto that will give you the opportunity to be outside of that system and have it in several different locations, preferably hardware wallets, excuse me, that can give you the opportunity to be outside of the system and move your crypto as you need to in order to survive. All right, so they were just talking about confiscating, or the potential to confiscate, you know, crypto and gold and so on. And it's not the first time it's happened. And so let's let them talk about that, and about the gold confiscation in the past. So let's get to that.
Things go wrong. So I do feel like that is a big part of it, to think that people from 1935 are going to have like some visceral sense of what it means when the government just like, I'll take your gold now. And, you know, I know part of the punchline of this, where it's like, I'm going to take your gold, I'm going to buy it back at whatever, 70 cents on the dollar, or I'm going to buy it from you at 70 cents on the dollar. They literally just seize 30% of your wealth. It's bananas.
That's right. So, yeah, this is like a dilution of 70% by one measure. But yes, the cases dominated the news throughout the period. On January 13th, Elliot Thurston, wrote, "Rarely, if ever, has the Supreme Court of the United States confronted issues of larger import," 1935. On the morning after the decisions, the New York Times ran 5 front-page articles about them, and they were the overwhelming focus of the news and business sections. For perspective, the number of articles devoted to them more closely resembles that of historic moments like the moon landing or 9/11 attacks than it did other major Supreme Court decisions such as Roe versus Wade. Okay, the phrase "gold clause" appeared in more Times articles 49 on the day after than poultry, minimum wage, and abortion combined on the days after Schechter, West Coast, and Roe. Right. Academics also touted the case's magnitude and import. Right. And so, this has taken their place among the great landmarks of American constitutional history. So this is remarkable.
Dude, I think we're about to live through this again. I don't know what you think about this, but when I watch the posture right now towards crypto, this feels like capital controls in the making, that they're revving up. I mean, with the requested freeze of Binance US's assets. I don't know how that's going to play out, but man, that really starts to smack of like, hey, we're doing it. We're doing it to protect you. Don't worry. But like, PS, we're going to freeze your assets. It's like, what?
Exactly. And by the way, we're here to help. We're from the government and we're here to help. I love that quote from Ronald Reagan, the 9 scariest words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Anyway, so Tom's not wrong. You've seen this coordinated attack with Gary Gensler at the forefront, trying to just like pummel crypto into the ground by regulation through enforcement, and lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and again, it's for we're here to protect you. I don't need your protection, guy. Stop a foreign government from invading the country, keep, civility in the streets, and then leave me alone. It's that simple. Okay. It's that simple. I'll protect the rest of the shit myself. Anyway, the point being that the government's already done it in the past. They've confiscated through executive order gold way back in, I think it was, I don't remember who did it. I'm not going to lie. Forgot. Sorry. Anyway, but they've already done it. The government has already proven that they're willing to confiscate your ability to be outside the system. So the only thing that keeps you autonomous and able to function outside of whatever instrument or system that they put into place is the fact that you have the ability either through gold. I'm sorry, it is a legitimate option, or cryptocurrency. And again, how you break that up, how you secure it, how you do what you need to do in order to be able to access it without them being able to confiscate it at the end of a gun from you, matters. That matters. There's one last section. I'm over an hour and I apologize. I didn't have any intention for this live stream to go this long. There's one more section that I want to end with, and then I'll recap a little bit and we'll go from there. So let me try and cue that up right now. And again, it's a little bit more about confiscation. And let's see, where are we here? Right about here. Perfect. All right, I'm going to kick it off, and then we'll this is a little ahead of where they start talking about it.
And something, the more feasible it becomes. So this shows, I think, because it's profitable, it becomes more economically feasible. You're not going, pushing downhill. In a sense, it's like a physical social network.
Now I want to battle to the death on how real I think this is. Okay, so I love this concept. I think it's really interesting. But every time I think about this, my brain breaks a little because I have some core fundamental things that seem like they are showstoppers. Mm-hmm. But I know you've thought a lot more about this than I have.
Shoot, go.
Okay, so the way that I see this is that the nation, the actual nations that these reside within will fight this with everything they have. And so I will give people Exhibit A. So Exhibit A is the US. We have become regulatory, just oppressive when it comes to crypto and Web3. And so when I see that posturing, and I know that creates opportunities, it creates opportunities at the state level, it creates opportunities at the national level, but because you're going to have the interjurisdictional warfare, even a country that opens itself up and is like, okay, this is going to be our differentiator, how are they going to make their money for letting you be the nation state? So it's basically, worst case, you have a country that clamps down. So the US right now is making no moves to let this happen. They're taking the exact opposite tact. In fact, I've heard you say that the US is mimicking China and how they're locking down on everything or cracking down on everything.
First, the US is it's not united anymore. It's not a unitary entity. DC and blue America is hostile to new stuff, absolutely. But red and purple America may not be, number one. Number two is the design of the network state is set up to be resistant to the nation state in the same way that Bitcoin is. It's physically decentralized, right? So if you've got
then let's have this debate. So I don't think Bitcoin is very resistant. Disabuse me of this. If you have, I get that you can make it hard for me. I get that you make it more expensive. We talked about that earlier. But dude, I only have to destroy the lives of so many people before people either flee, at which point I clamp down on you anyway, and I'm going to capital control the shit out of you. And so you try to leave, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to pay, what was it, 100 months of salary or whatever countries have done
like
with,
like the Soviet Union, right?
Right. Like they are going to find ways to stop you from being capital flight.
So this is going to be a huge fight. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I don't think that legacy governments are going to win it, and or rather, they're not going to win it to 100%. Okay.
Agreed.
And I'll give several arguments for this. The first is that in the centralizing arc upward, you had, the brain trust. You ever heard of that? FDR had all these smart guys. There was a period from the early 1930s to 1969 where you had Hoover Dam, Manhattan Project, Apollo, where all the smart guys could no longer, this is crucial, they could no longer go and they couldn't be Rockefeller and Carnegie and so on and so forth. So they joined the government. That's why you had all this tech talent in the government. That's an unusual thing. All these, genius scientists and so on, and engineers. After that period, the IQ, and before that period, the IQ drained out of the federal government. Like the federal government did not get the best people, arguably in the 1800s. They were all building railroads and, then later automobiles and aviation in the early 20th century, right? It was something which was an aberrant time. And now today, a lot of the IQ, a lot of the intelligence has gone out of especially the US federal government. Okay, if you have...
Okay, how can you argue with that? I think that's a good point to end that on. Yes, I'm sorry. Again, 9 scariest words in the US language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I don't mean this to be doom and gloom. And ultimately, I know that this particular video Tom put out in Impact Theory wasn't meant for that either. Again, make sure you watch the entire thing. I've pulled selected pieces out that I wanted to discuss and expound upon and so on here today. But make sure you go watch the whole thing. Link is in the description below. And again, if you don't follow Tom on YouTube or wherever, Twitter, wherever you like, links to his channel and his Twitter are in the description below as well. And please also Balaje, links to him in the description below. Go follow these guys. These are smart guys. I'm sorry. I'd like to think I'm a semi-intelligent individual. However, sometimes I think these guys run circles around me when I listen to them talk, and their grasp and understanding of the macro and micro events that just we're living through as we speak. But again, let's recap this a little bit, and then I'm gonna wrap this live stream up here. So, bottom line is, the collapse is coming. Some would argue it's already here. It's underway. I mean, banking collapses, what was it? 3 of the 4 biggest banking collapses in in U.S. history have happened in the last few months. I think a lot of that was caused, if not solely caused, by the Fed. I believe, now again, these are my opinions only, that they were caused primarily on purpose. The end goal is control. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The end goal is control. And one of the best ways to control people is the food supply, which that's a whole video for another time, and the money supply. And right now, there is a huge fight for control of the money supply around the globe. And so CBDCs, some already in place, like China, and some, in my opinion, soon to be in place, like in the US with FedNow. The only way, let's scrap that. My goal in survival here is creating as many streams of income as possible, because, crush one end, crush another end. That's what the government's going to do, much like the censoring of social media platforms. And having a few alternatives outside of the current system or the pending CBDC system. So gold, again, once this video live stream is posted, there'll be a link to Acre Gold, dollar cost average into gold, have it shipped direct to your door. That's a great option. It's been an option since the beginning of time. And cryptocurrency. Again, I caution you, as was mentioned earlier in this video by Balaje, that, the future might be the government demanding big tech scan devices for private keys. So while right now desktop wallets, mobile wallets are still an option, they may not be in the future. So you may want to consider hardware options to store your crypto wealth. Links to all of that in the description below. But we're at over an hour and 20 minutes in this live stream. I'd like to say thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to end this live stream on this, and maybe we'll zip off to something else soon. But right now, make sure hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, tick the all. That way you get notified every time I put out great videos. Make sure you head over to Odyssey, link in the description below, and follow us there just in case this channel, for whatever reason, gets, the axe. So appreciate your time. I don't see any comments questions in the comments. So I'm just going to zip out, and that's going to do it. Till the next Wednesday, 10 o'clock Eastern, for the next live stream. All right, that's going to conclude the live stream. I would like to say thank you for watching me live. I really appreciate the support and your interaction in the live chat. But there's a couple of other things I'd like to talk about as well. Now, I'd like to take a moment to say you need to beware of scammers. With the advent of generative AI, it is becoming easier and easier for scammers to make you think that I am sitting here on YouTube or whatever other platform and asking you for money, your private keys. God only knows. I'm here to tell you, I will not ask you for your private keys. I will not ask you for any money. So if someone has reached out to you saying they're me, it is not me. Now that we got that unpleasantness out of the way, let's talk about how I can help you. Beside all the great content that I put out on all of my social media platforms, especially here on YouTube and Odyssey, I also provide personal one-on-one consulting. I'll put a link in the description below. If you're interested in a personal consultation to help you with whatever it is you're having difficulty with in cryptocurrency, click that link. We'll make it happen. I look forward to being able to help you with whatever it is you need. Remember, I will not provide financial advice. I'm not going to handle your crypto, nothing like that. But if you need help with anything else, feel free to hit that consult button and we'll make it happen. Now, I also have a Telegram channel. There's an open Telegram, which you see here. Link in the description below. Head on over there. I'm posting in there all the time. But I also have a private Telegram. Now, I do charge a small fee for that because you have more direct access to me. So if you have a question, it's a little easier to get that kind of thing answered if it's something simple. Not to mention, I put out different information inside the private Telegram group, sometimes different trades I'm doing, etc. So you can get a leg up if you're a trader. Links for all that in the description below. Now, finally, if you're looking to support the channel, there's a few different ways you can do it. Inside of all the descriptions on my videos, there are a bunch of different links. Some of them are affiliate links. Basically, those affiliate links provide me and my channel with a small compensation if you decide to utilize whatever product or service that I'm promoting there. Realize that I don't promote anything that I don't use myself. So rest assured that if the link is there, I believe in it. If you use Brave browser, you can also send me a tip on Brave browser. I am a certified content creator on Brave. So if you're a Brave user, you know how to do that. And finally, you can head on over to Cointree, link in the description below. On Cointree, you have the ability to send me a tip. More importantly, on Cointree, I have listed all my official social media links. So you can rest assured if you want to follow me and everything that I put out for CryptoCoinMindSet, these are the links where you're going to find all that information. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon.